Good afternoon to everybody. I think thank you very much for making the time today. Look forward to briefing you on our current update on the status of our wage negotiations and the process to date. I think before we jump straight in, it's certainly a custom within our company and I think much of the industry to start most of our meetings with a brief moment where we just reflect on safety or health, diversity, inclusivity. I'm sure as many of you would be aware, it's been a tragic year and more recently a tragic few weeks for us as a company and for the industry as a whole. So I think most appropriate. What I would really like to share today, I think is probably something that is applicable to all of us. It relates to COVID. There's no doubt that we are currently in a fourth wave and certainly seeing infections rising very drastically. This is having an impact, I think, on all of our lives and certainly all of our industry. I think from a positive perspective, we're very pleased as a company to have more than 80% of our employees vaccinated. And really the moment that I'd like to share today is with everybody to try and get vaccinated in an attempt to manage this pandemic. But most importantly, as we move into the December holiday season, I think we all wish for a return to normality. But please, while this wave is up, let us also remember those non-pharmaceutical measures of wearing our masks, practicing social distancing, particularly big gatherings in indoor places. And let's all stay safe over the Christmas holidays. Thank you very much. Memory, if we could move on to the first slide, thank you. So I guess just as a bit of background, our current wage agreement came to an end at the end of June 2021, and we have officially started our wage negotiations in July. We negotiated directly with unions for 4 months, which after that period we were not able to find a settlement, and the matter was effectively referred to the CCMA. During the process, we obviously continued to engage with the unions, trying to reach an outcome. I dare say we acted in good faith, and over that period we revised our offer 5 times in a sincere attempt to try and reach an agreement. Critically, to reach an agreement that is fair, will benefit employees, and importantly considers the sustainability of our operations and the very many stakeholders that depend on them. I think we are disappointed that we haven't yet reached a conclusion, and we're also disappointed that the unions haven't moved significantly from their initial demands. The demands as things stand would add an estimated 2.5 billion rand onto our wage bill over the next 3 years, a number which, as we will show you, is not sustainable, nor does it have any correlation to inflation. So I think, as you know, we haven't been able to reach an agreement with our 4 unions, AMCU, NUM, UASA and Solidarity. And as such, the next step in the process is for the CCMA to issue a certificate of non-resolution. That doesn't mean that we have to stop engaging. Contrary to that, in fact, we will still engage. But essentially what it does do is it allows either party to consider a strike or, in the case of the employer, a lockout. On the 24th of November, the CCMA conciliation process was extended until the 21st of December. And this is really a requirement to define picketing rules. A requirement before a certificate of non-resolution can be issued is for these picketing rules to be defined and agreed. That is scheduled to occur on the 13th of December, on Monday. And thereafter, the CCMA has another week, essentially, to inspect sites and finalize that certificate of non-resolution. I think if we just consider the economic context in which we find ourselves in the middle of these wage negotiations, we of course recognize that there have been hardships across the country. We recognize that our employees have needs and aspirations, and ultimately they also want to better their own lives and their children, and that is important. I think around us we see unprecedented unemployment. I think we've seen small businesses closing, and there's been a very real impact on our economy over the last 2 years. As a sector, despite the fact that mining has done relatively well, we definitely have not been immune, particularly to the inflationary and other pressures, including disruptions of our operations as a result of COVID, that other sectors have also felt. I think the challenges that are faced by the South African gold mining sector in general are fairly well known. Most of our operations are increasing in depth. We have aging infrastructure. We have greater distances to travel to our workplaces. We have declining grades. And ultimately, all of that feeds into reduced operating flexibility in terms of the environments we're operating in, a decline in production, decline in productivity, and ultimately that means an increase in our unit operating costs. I think in addition to those challenges, the input cost structure of the gold sector has a significant portion is electricity and labor costs. This means that our sector has got quite a different cost profile to many of the other mining sectors. Steep increases that we've seen in particularly electricity and wages over the last decade have really led to an unsustainable rise in the total inflation that our sector's experienced. Since 2010, production across the sector has halved, while employment's declined by about 40%. And I think, as we all know, new investment into the sector alone, or let alone the country as a whole, has not been at its peak. I think if we consider our operations, the cost of labor at our operations makes up around half of our total costs. Electricity makes up about 20%. So 70% of our total cost base comes from those two factors. And these costs, as I mentioned just now, have risen substantially above inflation since 2013, when Sibanye Gold was formed. If we just place this into context, over the past 8 years since the formation of our company, the cost of electricity has increased by about 130%. Inflation at the same time has been around 50% over that period, meaning electricity in real terms today is costing us about 80% more than what it did 8 years ago. I think similarly for our entry-level employees, our Cat 4 employees, their wages have increased by more than 70%, and that is about 30% higher than inflation, or today they are earning 30% more in real terms than what they did 8 years ago. Wages for miners and artisans and officials, that's increased by about 50%, roughly 10% higher than inflation, while wages for senior management is largely in line with inflation. I think the increases that we see, particularly for our entry-level workers, has been very necessary over the past few years, and that has been a very intentional adjustment in order to make sure that entry-level workers are in fact receiving a fair wage within our organization. As it stands today, and we will share some of this with you, we do believe we are paying a fair wage. And that is based on benchmarking ourselves against the industry in which we operate, as well as other industries and overall the South African context. But we have to recognize that we've reached a point now where the sustained and continued above inflation wage increases are simply not sustainable and will start having severe negative consequences for our operations. As I mentioned, there really are two key underlying principles on which we base our offer and through which we approach wage negotiations. The first and foremost, as mentioned on the last slide, is, are we paying a fair wage? We have made significant strides over the last few years, as I just indicated, with 30% real increases for our lower level Cat 248 employees, to infer that our wages are both fair and competitive with the industry. We've undertaken significant analysis to understand that, and again, we'll touch on it in a bit more detail in the following slides. Secondly, and very importantly, we also need to consider the sustainability of our operations. This has to be done in line with our vision and the way we operate, which is about superior value for all stakeholders. And on this slide, you will see what is really the constitution of our company, our Mdoni tree, that talks to that philosophy and to that vision. In order to continue to benefit these stakeholders, our operations have to remain profitable in the long run. As it stands today, our gold operations employ about 30,000 people. If we think about the fact that within mining, every employee supports somewhere between 5 and 10 dependents, and that for every direct mining job, you have about 2 indirect jobs in the supply chains and the supporting services, and they have 10 dependents, that means that indirectly, our operations are supporting about 1 million people in South Africa. When you consider that, for us, these wage negotiations are a huge responsibility. We have to ensure the sustainability of these operations for all of those stakeholders. that's absolutely critical, particularly in the context in which South Africa finds itself today. And it's these two factors, being fair wages and sustainability of our operations, that underpins how we construct our wage offers. I think we've said it on numerous occasions, and for anybody who attended our recent investor days, we are committed to our gold operations. We have good plans in place that will ensure that they have the ability to continue in a sustainable manner. But this, of course, does require collaboration from all stakeholders to mine safely, to deliver on our production targets, to manage costs, and importantly, to avoid any further disruptions. Since we took over these operations from Gold Fields in 2013, we have stabilized these operations and in fact significantly extended their lives beyond what was originally forecast. And we believe we can continue that trend. It's been after 5 years of solid operations, our gold operations suffered significant disruptions. We had the 5-month strike by AMCU, which ended in 2019, and more recently, disruptions due to COVID. It's really only in the past 10 months that these operations have truly stabilized again and return to normalized and planned operating levels. But in order to sustain that, we absolutely have to manage the significant cost pressures associated with our two largest cost drivers, that being wages and electricity. So to come to the wage offer specifically, on the 18th of November, we tabled a conditional offer to our unions, and at that time it was a conditional offer made on the basis that all 4 unions that have formed part of the coalition, being AMCU, NUM, UASA, and Solidarity, accepted that offer. That offer at the time would have meant that our category 4 to 8 employees, our entry-level employees, would have received an increase of about 570 Rand in the first year, 570 Rand per month in the first year. That equated to an average increase of about 5.2% for the basic entry-level worker. That would have increased to 640 Rand per month in the second year and 670 Rand per month in the third year. Miners, artisans, and officials were offered 4.5% in year 1, increasing to 4.9% in years 2 and 3. In addition to these numbers, which are the headline numbers we always talk to, there are, of course, several other non-direct wage issues and items that were also progressed and agreed. In Rand terms, what this offer really meant over the next 3 years was that the average guaranteed income, which includes basic pay, holiday leave allowance, living out allowance, and provident fund contributions, for an entry-level category 4 underground employee, and they make up about 30% of our total workforce, would have increased from just over 16,000 Rand a month to just under 18,200 Rand a month by the end of this wage agreement, by the middle of 2023. What it meant for us as a company is that the conditional offer would have increased our total wage bill at our gold operations by about 1.4 billion Rand over the 3-year period. And that's just on the basic wages. That excludes the concessions we made in respect of the non-wage demands that also form part of the employee's total remuneration. Unfortunately, that offer was not accepted. And as a result, we have reverted back to the previous offer that was made. That offer will increase our costs at our gold operations by 1.2 billion Rand over the 3 years, and would mean that category 4 to 8 employees will receive an increase of 520 Rand in year 1, 610 Rand in year 2, and 640 Rand in year 3. Miners, artisans, and officials would receive an increase of 4.1% in year 1, increasing to 4.7% in year 2, and 4.7% in year 3. Our current offer would mean that over the next 3 years, the average guaranteed income for an entry-level category 4 underground employee would increase to just on 18,000 Rand per month by the middle of by the end of the wage agreement. So to try and put this remuneration into context of what it means in terms of the broader offer, it's worthwhile comparing what our employees in our gold operations earn compared to other industries and within the country as a whole. Currently at our operations, an average entry C-level category 4, so that's our entry-level employee, today receives a guaranteed income of just over 16,000 Rand per month. That is before any increases. An average Category 5 pump operator, the one level up, receives a guaranteed income of about 17,200 Rand per month, just under 17,200. An average Category mine stoker receives a guaranteed income of just under 27,500 Rand per month. And an average Category 9 electrician receives a guaranteed income of just under 40,500 Rand per month. Obviously, all of these earnings that I'm quoting excludes any bonuses, which of course can comprise a significant portion of an employee's total remuneration. If we take those numbers and compare them to other industries in South Africa, as well as South Africa as a whole, if we look at Stats SA in the second quarter of this year, the average salary in South Africa within the formal sector, the employed formal sector, including bonuses and overtime, amounted to about 23,500 Rand. Monthly remuneration for entry-level employees in the steel and engineering sector amounts to about 12,700 Rand per month, including benefits. And the average salary for a teacher, and that's average, not entry, is about 16,200 Rand per month, while nurses can earn an average of about 20,500 Rand per month. I think if we consider our offer versus demands, and as I've highlighted previously, we have taken considerable care in how we've put together our offer, balancing the needs of our employees, what is a fair wage, as well as the sustainability of our operations. And we believe what we have on the table is currently fair. It does take into account the cost of living increases, and importantly considers the sustainability of our operations for the benefits of all stakeholders. As we've highlighted already, around 1 million people are directly affected by these wage negotiations. If we look at it a little bit differently, acceding to the current wage demand of around 1,000 Rand per month that is being demanded by unions for Cat 4 to 8 employees, and that excludes any other demands that are on the table, not on just on the basic wage, that would add about 90,000 Rand per kilogram to our all-in sustaining costs over the next 3 years. If you consider that our year-to-date costs are approximately 820,000 Rand per kilogram on the operations we are currently negotiating for, and that the average gold price for the year-to-date has been around 838,000 Rand per kilogram, these demands are clearly not sustainable in terms of maintaining our operations. Given the amount of stakeholders dependent on this, the 1 million people I've mentioned, we cannot in good conscience and in the interest of these 1 million people agree to these kind of numbers. Just in terms of the way forward, our next session, which will take place under the auspices of the CCMA, that occurs on Monday, taking on finalizing the picketing rules. Finalizing the picketing rules is a requirement by the CCMA before they can issue a certificate of non-resolution. The purpose of these picketing rules is to ensure that picketing or any form of industrial action that should occur is done in a lawful, peaceful, and orderly manner, and is aimed at preventing acts of lawlessness, violence, intimidation, and damage to property. We do truly hope that lessons have been learned from the past and that we can reach a reasonable agreement that will not jeopardize our future. So in conclusion, I'd just like to say we continue to appeal to our unions and to our employees to continue engaging with us, to consider our offer, to avoid embarking on a strike, and to see if together as combined stakeholders, we can work towards sustaining these operations for the benefit of all stakeholders for many years still to come. Thank you very much.